sat down together.
Been a
Very
while.
different time. It was in my London studio. And 8 days after that, you got arrested. What's the year been like for you?
It's certainly been an interesting one. I've been constrained this entire year. I spent 93 days in a Romanian dungeon, 5 months locked in my house, and now I'm restrained within the country of Romania. So it's certainly been a turbulent time.
The moment you got arrested, it was all pretty dramatic. The video came out, the world saw it, a lot of people smashing into your home. Did you have any inkling, warning that something like this may happen?
I knew it. I kept saying before I was arrested on every single podcast I did, I said, you get 3 lives in the world. The first life, they're going to cancel you. They're going to slander you. They're going to delete your access to social media so you can't defend yourself. The second life, they're going to try and put you in jail for no reason. And if you continue to speak against the power, they're going to assassinate you. I knew I was on my second life. I kept saying it. I knew.
So yeah, a lot of this really right here was, him talking about how, he thinks he's got 3 lives, and like he reiterates, he would never kill himself. Like he reiterated several times on the Tucker Carlson podcast. And, it's interesting, of course, Piers Morgan, I feel like he had to start this interview, talking about the charges, stuff like that. But, yeah, you feel like that was inevitable for him to ask those questions. But, every time you hear, I think the Piers Morgan, the first interview was so fascinating, the back and forth, just because, Morgan just kind of really wanted to pick Andrew Tate's brain. So he really wanted I think he really wanted to test to see if he did have a deep down a hatred for women. So yeah, I'm reacting to this. I still haven't seen this yet, so we'll keep watching this.
Romanian authorities knew that you were back because you were en route, I believe, to Dubai for a New Year's Eve party, is that you were interacting with Greta Thunberg on social media, and you had a pizza in front of you, which came from a well-known Romanian pizza store. Is there any truth to that?
I don't think so. I think that they know where I was. A lot of people knew where I was. And they had instructions from higher up to teach me a lesson. I was on my second life, and that's exactly what I'm going through right now.
There's an irony to your situation, because you always said the reason you came to Romania was precisely because you thought you could avoid being in this situation.
Well, I loved Romania, and it's a strong Christian nation with strong traditional values. I want a life government. I don't believe in big government. I'm trying to avoid that. It felt like Romania was a place which was very safe societally, and the government was not too interested or involved in people's lives. But things change. Also, your freedom and your ability to speak the truth is heavily correlated to your insignificance. When you become large and people start listening to what you say, you soon realize you no longer have freedom of speech. And it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. If they decide you must be assassinated, you will be assassinated.
You in jail, what was that like?
Romanian jail is not English jail.
Describe it. What was the cell like?
Yes, that's what's kind of funny about these darn interviews. I say darn interviews because, they were going to ask him about they were bound and determined to ask him about what jail's like. But like I said earlier, that was a question you knew was inevitable. But it was one of those questions where it's like, maybe he kind of has a new, because he didn't, whether it's Tucker Carlson or whatever they've asked him about the time in jail, he doesn't have time to talk about everything that happened in jail. But, maybe now that he's been asked, several times now, maybe he gives another insight or a new story about what happened in jail. Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it. I keep going back.
You say when you talked about this, that was pretty close to depression, what you were feeling.
Life's grim. And if you want to be a superhero, you have to understand if they decide you must be assassinated, you will be assassinated.
You in jail, what was that like?
Romanian jail is not English jail.
Describe it. What was the cell like?
I have to be careful what I say because I don't want to insult the Romanian justice system, which I'm still beholden to. However, it's exactly as bad as people would expect it to be. Luckily, it was in the winter, so the cockroaches were not too bad. It was also during Ramadan, so I didn't have to eat so much, which was helpful because of the situation. I think the most stressful thing about it is I had no idea how long I was going to be in there for. I was dragged from my house. I was given papers in Romania. I didn't know why I was there. I found out why I was there, and it was garbage. I couldn't seem to get out. I could have been held for years. It's very stressful. And the best thing you can do is turn to God and train as hard as possible. I did thousands of push-ups a day every
Were
single day.
you in solitary in this period, 3 months?
No, I wasn't in solitary the entire time. Sometimes I was by myself. Sometimes I was with other guys, and sometimes I was with my brother. So
when you were on your own, were they keeping you in there for 24 hours a day? Were you allowed out?
no, I wasn't allowed out. There was no yard time. It was 24 hours a day, locked in a single room, probably 3 or 4 steps large, and you do nothing but stare at the wall. And
How many days did you do that for on your own?
11, 12.
I mean, that's a pretty grim scenario for anyone.
Life's grim.
For you, always being Mr. Confident,
Jay seems pretty serious in this interview. This is not, I think the first time it was more, the first 2 times it was more so, hey, let me get to know you. I'm going to be a little bit more friendly, not as serious. I think this time, I think he's more, I don't know. I think this is a toughened, hardened Andrew Tate. I think this is I think that's part of it. But I think this interview, I think he's going into the mindset he's a little bit more serious. But yeah, I did not realize he was in the cell. Yeah, that's an interesting story. Didn't share that he was in the cell for 11, 12 days by himself.
you said, interestingly, that you wouldn't categorize what you were feeling as depression because you don't believe in the concept of depression. You and I have argued about that before. But it sounds to me, from what I've seen you say when you've talked about this, that was pretty close to depression, what you were feeling.
Life's grim. And if you want to be a superhero, you have to understand in every single superhero movie, he is losing for 80% of the movie. He's going to suffer for the majority of the movie before he wins at the end. I've always wanted an exceptional life, Piers, and I'm not a coward. And I knew that by telling the truth about certain issues, I was going to pay the price for it. So I won't say that I deserve to be in jail, but I certainly put myself in there by telling the truth to the populace and telling the truth and living.
But when you're on your own in that cell, what were you thinking?
The early Black Friday sale is on. Save up to 30% off site-wide and beat
It's a long time to self-reflect, right?
It certainly is. And I think my number one concern when I was in jail, despite the fact that my situation was dire, were my concerns as a man and all the people I have to take care of, and my children and my family and the people I pay for and all the people who work for me. And truthfully, I wasn't worried about myself. I was worried about everybody else. And I think that's the true masculine frame.
Did you get emotional? Did you shed tears in your cell?
I'm an emotional man. I think men are hyper emotional. We just have to control it. I was extremely busy inside of my jail cell. I had lots of push-ups to do. I was very concerned about the people on the outside. I was trying my best to get out. It's difficult for me to answer the question because it was an interesting frame of mind. I knew that God was watching and I had to perform. It's very difficult for me to go through life saying, I'm the top G, I'm this, I'm that, and speak about mental resilience and mental toughness. And then the second I'm thrown inside of a solitary confinement cell, cower out. I'm not that person. There's some other people who talk about mental toughness and want to give advice. And when bad things happen to them, they end up addicted to prescription drugs. I'm not a coward and I'm not a liar.
No, but it would be perfectly natural to be emotional.
Yeah, that's a great point he makes there too. There's so many people that any sort of adversity strikes them, they binge the alcohol. They smoke, they binge the pot, they binge the weed. Andrew Tate makes that point. You say you're the man. You say you're the man repeatedly. Obviously, over and over, something's gonna come up and challenge you. Something's gonna really test you mentally. I think that's why he reiterates. You say you're the top G. You're going to be challenged, and that's what he's really talking about there. Prison, jail, prison, whatever. Not fun, but yeah, you call yourself the top G repeatedly, God's going to test you at some point, and that's what his whole thing there.
emotional in that scenario, and there's no shame in admitting that.
I was emotional. I missed people. I missed them, and I knew they missed me. So I felt a strong sense of missing.
You cried.
There were tears that ran down my face, but I did not cry.
I mean, that's crying.
I would disagree.
Because you're worried about admitting that. You think it sounds
Absolutely
weak.
not. That's a perfectly fine scenario to cry in, but I think the act of crying is an act of desperation. To sit and to cry is an act in and of itself. To do push-ups, thinking of your children with tears running down your face, but you're concerned with finishing as many push-ups as possible within that day, I do not consider that crying. I consider that tears running down my face.
When you found out what they were alleging you'd done, sexual assault, exploitation, and so on, what did you feel about that? What was your first reaction?
My first reaction was, the standard playbook. The standard playbook for anybody who speaks up against power is sexual exploitation. Isn't it the normal one they go to? Can't we name like 10 or 15 people right now they hit them with this exact same garbage? Name a full-grown man who's 36 or 37 years old who's not had sexual relations with a woman at some point in the past. And the way the Matrix works is they lie by omission, right? They just hit Russell Brand with it. I think they hit P. Diddy with it this morning. Julian Assange just got hit with it. He's still in a cell.
But lots of people get hit with these allegations and it turns out to be true.
A lot of people get hit with them and they turn out to be false.
Yeah, but you're sort of trying to make out all the people you just named are innocent. You don't know that.
Of course I don't know that, but a lot of people get hit and it turns out to be false.
Why would you assume they're innocent?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the way the Matrix operates is it chooses something which is heinous. If they accused me of drug dealing, nobody would care. They choose something which is heinous, so the process itself is a punishment. So they damage your reputation throughout the process, regardless of whether it's successful or not. Then what they do is they lie by omission. They throw you in a cell and they contact everyone you've ever interacted with.
Yeah, that's a great point. They had to, he's reiterated that, several times. He's reiterated that several times, but that's a great point. They had to come out with a crime like that. Because even when I first heard this, I was like, obviously I like Andrew Tate a lot, so I want to side with him immediately. I mean, obviously I'm going to come up with stuff, or I'm obviously going to try to find more evidence to side with him. But, when you see human trafficking and some of the charges, you immediately kind of like your stomach you kind of get tense and you're like, oh, you kind of say to yourself, oh man, if this is true, that's, a guy that you looked up to, a guy whose opinion you respect so much. Could he have been a fraud the whole time? But it looks like all these were not true. Crap.
Supportive to me. I know yours has to you. Did you think about your mother?
I was extremely concerned for her. I was concerned. 999 people who said I'm a very nice man. Lie by omission. I think they hit P. Diddy with it this morning. Julian Assange just got hit with it. He's still in a cell.
But lots of people get hit with these allegations and it turns out to be true.
A lot of people get hit with them and they turn out to be false.
Yeah, but you're sort of trying to make out all the people you just named are innocent. You don't know that.
Of course I don't know that, but a lot of people get hit and it turns out to be false.
Why would you assume they're innocent?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the way the Matrix operates is it chooses something which is heinous. If they accused me of drug dealing, nobody would care. They choose something which is heinous, so the process itself is a punishment. So they damage your reputation throughout the process, regardless of whether it's successful or not. Then what they do is they lie by omission. They throw you in a cell and they contact everyone you've ever interacted with. 2,000 people I know were called, and they were looking for one person to say they're a victim. By the way, they failed. They did not even find one. But if they did, they would then say, Andrew Tate's victim, he's a sexual assaulter. And they would remove the testimony of the 1,999 people who said, I'm a very nice man. Lie by omission, and then they put together this entire package, use the mainstream media to convince the world that you deserve to be in jail, and that is how the Matrix operates.
I mean, to be clear, I don't know if you're guilty or not.
I do.
You're perfectly entitled to say that, and right?
Of course I know.
But I don't know, and I will await any trial that comes to see what comes out in the trial and see what happens, right? So I'm not going to prejudge the trial. I'm not going to judge you and say, I think you're guilty. I don't know, right? We are where we are. You've been charged with serious crimes, and it's likely you'll face a trial, and we'll see how that.
See, here we go. That's the problem. Here we go with I talk about Piers Morgan's a walking on eggshells kind of guy. What I mean by that is, you see, here he goes with trying to please everyone. Okay, he's saying, I don't know if you're guilty or not. What he's saying is, I don't want to come out and defend you here because I don't want to lose. I'm afraid to lose some of my audience. They're the classic case of Piers Morgan. Once again, I don't, like I said, I don't really I don't dislike Piers Morgan necessarily, but this is just, he's kind of a case of a guy that's just, he wants to be the, please, he kind of just too much wants to be the please everyone kind of guy.
All plays out, obviously. Going back to jail, how were you treated by other people?
Everybody in jail was extremely apologetic to me. All of the staff, the police officers, everyone who worked in the jail, the person who served me my meal, everybody was very sorry for what happened to me. They made it very clear they knew it was garbage, and they were apologetic. That was the only vibe I could give you. They were kind of like, listen, you got too big. I'm sorry. This is how things work. And sorry, here's your meal. Nobody had any real problem with me. None of the prisoners had a problem with me.
Did you get into any fights?
There was a couple scenarios where violence could have occurred, but I think once people realize that violence is a certainty and that you do not operate under a fearful realm, they often aren't so interested.
So people threatened you?
I wouldn't say they threatened me, but they would have liked to have got the opportunity to threaten me.
And what happened?
And they realized that would have been a bad decision. And all in all,
well, what did you say to them? Because you don't speak Romanian, so.
I didn't. You're right. I actually used a quote from Street Fighter. I said, I quoted Dowson, and I said, they do not understand the secrets of yoga fire, because I knew they had no idea what I was talking about. It was near the washing machines, and they looked at me like I was completely crazy, and they walked away.
There's more than one person.
Correct.
And they made it clear what? That they wanted to.
I have to be careful what I say because I'm still beholden to the Romanian judicial system.
Yeah, but that's just an incident in jail. That's
correct.
Nothing to do with the system.
An incident report was written, and it's better I don't mention it.
But there was a direct threat to you.
I've had threats, yeah, and I have threats every single day of my life. And I think jail is a hyper-pressurized version of reality. And you need to have an extremely strong mind so you don't attack yourself, and an extremely strong body so others don't attack you. And I understood that there was a threat of violence at all times, and I just decided to go through life extremely respectfully, but make it clear if that's a decision somebody else wants to make, that I'm prepared to partake.
One of the things I would think about, other than my family, immediate family, but one particular member of my family, if I found myself in jail, would be my mother, and what she would be feeling and what she'd be thinking. She's been incredibly supportive to me. I know yours has to you. Did you think about your mother?
I was extremely concerned for her. I was concerned because the media establishment were hounding her. She was obviously very worried, but she knew she raised strong sons. But we're her number one protectors, and I was concerned for her. I wasn't concerned for myself in jail. I didn't even suffer in jail as much as I did when I got out. I didn't have nightmares in jail. I had nightmares once I left jail. I was in the middle of a battle. I don't think you get PTSD while you're fighting. You get it afterwards. I was in the middle of a battle trying to make sure that everybody I love and care about is taken care of, and trying to make sure that bills are paid. Please understand, the day I was arrested, which is a year ago, every single bank account that I have was frozen. All of my assets were taken. I haven't had a dollar of money.
You had 10
since
cars
January.
taken, I think.
15.
15 cars and how many properties?
15 cars, 6 properties, 20 diamond watches, gold bars, cash, land, every single bank account, millions and millions and
what
millions
was the total
dollars.
value of everything they seized?
16, 17 million.
Pounds?
Yeah. And they took all of it. And I still don't have access to any of these things.
I mean, as we're doing this interview, you're expecting to hear sometime today as to whether you may get those possessions back. Is it all or nothing? Do you get it all back or nothing?
Correct. As we sit here, the judge is deciding whether I get all of my items returned or I get none of them returned. And truthfully, under the law, I should have never had them taken in the first place. So we're going to see what the judge decides. And I have to put my faith within the Romanian judicial system. I have no other choice. I'm not a coward. I'm not going to run. But let's not talk about the Romanian judicial system. Let's talk about the judicial systems of the world. I've recently seen some very scary decisions in America and England, in these Western democratic nations. You see people doing 20 years for attending peaceful protests. So you start to sit and wonder when you're in these situations, what is a trial? What is a judge? What is this? These are just people in a room.
Which peaceful protest are you talking about?
There's been a few. And
who's got 20 years for attending a peaceful protest?
I don't want to say names. I saw it somewhere on Twitter. Somebody attended, I think it was a protest, a pro-Trump protest, and they ended up getting 20 years.
Well, if you're talking about the January 6th riots, they were riots where people died.
Well, it's interesting.
They're not peaceful protests.
Well, it's interesting because the world is actually very nuanced. And what I tried.
But that wasn't nuanced. That was a huge mob of
what
people
I tried to do,
attacking the U.S. Capitol.
Well, what I tried to do is I try to look at a broad spectrum of events, and I try to put things into a nuanced view, and I don't try and take a instant black or white point of view on things. And the fact that BLM were rioting and destroying the entire nation for months and during that exact week, and then some other people got together with a opposing political view and are facing serious prison time for doing less damage than BLM did. I find that kind of scary because
people did die.
Well, in a democratic nation, we should all be the same under the law.
But Andrew, just to be clear, on January the 6th, people died.
People died during BLM.
I mean, there are certainly inconsistencies in the way groups of people have been policed. I think that's the same. That's the same whether you're talking about the BLM marches to the pro-Palestinian marches and so on, right? There's a lot of inconsistency.
Well, then we agree.
There's a lot of inconsistency in global policing, I think. I think that's a perfectly valid thing to say. But the idea that someone's got 20 years for being in a peaceful march is not true. The ones who've got the lengthy prison sentences have been held account for serious crime.
I'm not even condoning January 6th. I don't even know the ins and outs of January 6th. I wasn't there. I'm not saying it should have happened. What I'm saying is exactly what you have said. There seems to be some massive inconsistencies in global policing now. So when you end up in a position where you're speaking against the system, as I do, and you understand that there are massive inconsistencies in policing globally, you start to sit down and seriously wonder if you stand a fair chance of a fair trial in any country on earth. I actually have to give massive credit to the Romanian judicial system because a judge one day sat down and said, why are these boys in jail, and let us go. I don't know if I would have had a fair shot like that in many other nations.
When you were released from jail after about 3 months, what was that feeling like?
My brother and I were in the same cell at that time. We were extremely happy. I remember using the last of my mouthwash. During the day, I had some rituals to keep me sane, and I'd enjoy one swig of mouthwash a day. It's amazing how bored you get when you're staring at cockroaches, and even that sensation.
So there were literally cockroaches in your cell?
Correct.
How many at any given time?
At night, there was a lot of them.
Like what, dozens or?
Yeah, a few. There was an infestation. We did our best to kill as many as we could. It kept us entertained, but they're annoying to sleep with. But
so think about how awful that is, sleeping with cockroaches. He talked about it in, I think, the Tucker Carlson podcast, how it's amazing how humans adjust to that. So he said he got used to the cockroaches, but think about how terrible that is. And think about, people talk about that in jail a lot. Sometimes you just want to go insane. And how killing cockroaches is like, thinking like, for some people that's like a disgusting thing, but like when you're in a situation like that, that can keep you sane. That's crazy when you think about it. But yeah, I did not realize there was, that many. He didn't really share that, how many there were, and then how many there were at night, and how, killing them was entertaining. And yeah, he didn't share that story about the mouthwash. So yeah, interesting.
mouthwash was something I enjoyed every day. The sensation of mouthwash made me happy, and I remember using all of my mouthwash. And then instantly my brain started turning to all of the things I need to do. I'm a man, I have responsibilities. For 93 days, I wasn't working. I started concerning myself with, okay, I'm about to get out of jail, thank God. I'm gonna leave. Who do I need to take care of? What's paid? Do I have any money left? Are bills due? Is mom okay? Are my children okay? And I just started thinking about work. And as soon as I got out, I didn't sleep for 3 days.
How many children do you have?
That's confidential.
Why?
Because I have enemies, and unfortunately, I do not want to give them any information.
But you have more than one.
I have more than one, correct?
Right. So obviously you're caring for your children. I understand that as a father, right? And obviously, and you have a partner?
Yes.
Are you married?
No.
I think I asked you last time and you were a bit cryptic about it. You're not married yet?
No.
You have a partner who's the mother of your children?
Correct.
The same woman is the mother of all your kids?
It's confidential.
It's a bit stupid to say confidential.
It is confidential, Piers. It's
I
confidential.
don't think you marry and have kids with is confidential, surely.
It is for me.
Really?
Of course, I am basically #1 enemy of the state, Piers. Look what they've done to me. What have they put me in jail for? At the beginning of this garbage, people were sitting there thinking, maybe he's a human trafficker. It's been a year. Who? Show me a picture. Show me a video. Who's even a victim? There's nobody. The whole thing is made up.
Well, we're going to come to what they say you've done, right? We're going to come to that. But I'm just curious. You come out of prison. You've got no ability to access any of your assets. How have you been functioning financially since then?
I believe in prayer and I trust in God.
Well, prayer doesn't pay the bills.
And I do my very best.
But prayer doesn't pay the bills.
Unfortunately, absolutely everything I own was seized by the Romanian state. So I'm just going to have to survive and do my very best.
Yeah, but how?
I'm doing my very best, Piers.
Have you got wealthy benefactors helping you?
I'm doing my very best. I wish I had wealthy benefactors. I wish I had people on my side.
Yeah, you can't function on no income at all.
Seems you can.
How?
I'm doing my very best, Piers.
What does that mean?
It means I'm doing my very best. Absolutely everything I own is taken by the Romanian state. I don't have anything they don't have.
How do you pay for food?
Just have to do my best.
What does that mean?
It means that I believe in God and I pray.
Well, God's not going to pay your bills.
God has been paying my bills so far, it seems. It's amazing how far faith can take you. It's often when you have absolutely nothing left, people turn to faith, but you should turn to faith first. And you should believe in God when things are good, and that He will be there when times are bad.
Initially, you were put on.
Yeah, that's a great point he makes there. That yeah, sometimes you just got to thank God when things are going really well, and then, in this case, there's another example of Pierce really trying to challenge him. I think, that is. I mean, it is what it is. I think Morgan. I think that's just kind of the entertainment factor he wants to bring. He just really wants to challenge him to, just so he can kind of keep that notion of a tough interviewer and kind of maintain the guy who's trying to please everyone, and he doesn't want to just look like he's good old buddies with Andrew Tate and trying to play the role of I'm not just all on his side, I'm challenging him a little bit kind of thing.
This massive.
When you build your online store with GoDaddy, it's easy to sell everywhere your customers shop.
PSYOP. We're going to convince everybody to inject themselves with poison, and we're going to lock everyone in their houses, and it's all a lie, and we're going to let this one guy who everyone listens to.
Andrew, it wasn't.
There's no money, and the victims are saying, I didn't exploit them to do TikTok. The whole thing is a joke.
What is, I think, problematic for you is the war room, which was a group
miscategorized and misunderstood.
It was called the war room.
Correct.
Okay. And it had a lot of people who were dubbed the generals who ran the war room.
Correct.
For you. And the war room had 500 to 600 members who paid, I think, $6,000+ to be a member of this. And when you saw the logs of the web chats between people from the war room to each other, a lot of it made disturbing reading. Were you disturbed by it when you read that?
Firstly, a lot of that is bullshit. A lot of that's fake. Secondly,
you think that literally those logs are fake?
Absolutely. Secondly,
but the BBC verified them.
The BBC verified them, or they're the same people who verified the vaccine. Those people, they're liars. Firstly, a lot of them are fake. Secondly,
were you disturbed by anything you read?
No, because none of it's real. Firstly. Secondly, there's 4,000 members in the war room. Thirdly, the war room is about masculine personal development. We talk about fitness, making money, strength. We talk about very important things. There's 4,000 members inside. If you're telling me that amongst 4,000 members with 24-hour chats 7 days a week for the last 5 years, they've managed to find 2 guys talking locker room talk, and that somehow offends the world, then nobody understands how the world works. That's not why I was in jail. It's nothing to do with the war room. I was in jail because I spoke against power, because I told the truth about COVID, because I told the truth about the war in Ukraine, because I told the truth about all of these things.
I don't understand why people would want to put you in jail for giving your opinions about COVID or Ukraine. Why would they?
Why wouldn't they?
Well, why would they? Why would they say that Andrew Tate's opinion is so important on Ukraine that we have to put him in jail? I don't buy that.
Okay, because I was the most Googled man on the planet, and I had a huge affinity with the most troublesome demographic for the Matrix, which is the young masculine youth, the people who you need to die in wars, the people who you need to psyop into being slaves to build the roads while telling them that they're not allowed a point of view and they're not allowed an opinion on anything. And I was saying things which was going against the narrative. And the Matrix, the way it operates is it uses the MSM to purport lies, to inject slave programming into people's brains so that we live lives which are not good for us, but are good for them. And I was sitting there unplugging it. Why would they sit there and say, we've put together this massive psyop. We're going to convince everybody to inject themselves with poison, and we're going to lock everyone in their houses, and it's all a lie. And we're going to let this one guy who everyone listens to.
Andrew, it wasn't all a lie.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't. There was a new novel coronavirus. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the facts were, and you can then laugh at them if you wish.
Sure.
But there was a novel coronavirus, COVID-19.
Yeah, here we go again with the, I think this goes with the quote, if you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Here's Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, probably not a guy that if you see out in public would be wearing a mask, and he's probably not, 5-time COVID booster or whatever. But here's Piers Morgan that, like I said, again, walking on eggshells, trying to please everyone. He's trying to act like COVID wasn't a big deal, but at the same time, it was something that we should still, that something that was a big deal. So I'll let him finish talking about this, but here we go again. People just need to, it's just at this point, people just need to put COVID behind. It just, look, the reason I can think, Andrew Tate, his take might be the strong, kind of like his take might be not always 100%, maybe not 100% true that this whole thing was a setup, or this whole thing was like a psyop to get people to try to comply. Maybe that's not 100% true, but yeah, this definitely was I think we just need to acknowledge that, COVID was just taken way too seriously. And yeah.
It was killing thousands of people a day.
Really?
Yes,
That's
absolutely. Yeah, and and I know people who died.
Who doesn't? I knew people who died before Corona.
Fine, I'm sure people died of lots of things, but it was killing exponentially thousands and thousands of people. And then vaccines were developed at very high speed, and they managed to save, in my estimation, millions of lives. You may not agree with that.
Absolutely.
But those are facts as assumed by the body of scientific and medical experts in the world.
The body of scientific and medical experts, you mean the Matrix? I could get.
What is the Matrix?
The Matrix are a bunch of people who can come up with studies from the sky to say anything they want them to say, so they can use the MSM to purport garbage inside of people's minds. So you end up locked in your house, clapping for the NHS like a performing seal, injecting yourself with experimental poison for the 9th time. It's a lie. There was no reason to lock everyone in their house. More people died from missed cancer appointments than anyone ever died of COVID. People always got the sniffles before COVID, and they've always got it since. Let me ask you a question.
Hang on,
sir.
it wasn't.
Where is COVID gone?
It wasn't.
Diseases don't go away.
It wasn't.
Where's COVID gone?
It wasn't. Well, COVID strains have got milder, as indeed flu did. Flu used to
so
kill.
It's gone away.
Well, flu pandemic in about 100 years ago killed 50 to 100 million people, and it's got steadily milder over the decades since. This is normal medical science pathway for most pandemics, right? So on that, I mean, you're sort of cast iron, it was all Matrix MSM nonsense, is palpably untrue.
Well, I'll tell you why that's not untrue. Let me tell you my personal experience with COVID. I'm an extremely logical person. At the beginning, when everyone was dying, dropping dead in the streets in China, which I never saw, by the way, funny, and the Italian hospitals were full, English hospitals were never full, funny. Me and my brother sat there and said, if this disease is so deadly and can damage us as strong military-age males, then the world is over. So there's no point in hiding in our house. We decided to go to Sweden. On day one of COVID, day one when everyone still believed, we went to Sweden. Why does no one talk about the fact that Sweden was open the entire time? Why does no one talk about the fact they didn't have masks or lockdown or vaccines?
Yeah, that's a great point. I know he's talked about that in another stream about how, Sweden never locked down at all. He sent videos of him, out at the bar partying, or him out at the club partying, and people just like refused to ignore their own eyes. As he basically, that's what he said almost word for word. And yeah, it makes you, that's almost scary that, they say all the Italian hospitals and stuff are overrun. It's scary that they just were saying stuff like that.
My brother and I partied in nightclubs 7 days a week for 3 entire months while everyone in England was locked in their house.
Sweden actually had a number of restrictions.
Not when I was there. It was open.
Not as draconian as we had in the UK. And there are certainly legitimate questions to ask about the scale of our lockdowns. I think people panicked. They saw what was happening in Italy, which had the second best medical healthcare system in the world. And people were dying in massive numbers, and the hospitals were overrun. So people may have panicked.
Did you hear about the guy who died in a motorcycle crash and it was a COVID death? Did you hear about that one?
Well, there was certain
Downing Street didn't seem very concerned with
there
COVID.
was a long debate about people dying of COVID or with COVID. I know all that, but the bottom line for me, it is indisputable that COVID was a deadly pandemic that killed a lot of people. It turned out a lot of older people more than young people, but they didn't know that at the time, not for a long period. The vaccine saved millions of people's lives. There are legitimate questions about some of the boosters, about some of the side effects of the vaccines, as there are, by the way, with all vaccines. But the idea that COVID is some invention by the Matrix to suppress and control its people is for the birds, Andrew. It's
Well,
for the birds.
It seems the birds and
And I
I
don't
are
think,
friends.
don't think a smart guy like you actually believes that.
Of course, I
and that's one of my
absolutely
problems.
believe that.
One of my problems I have with you is that I think you are intelligent, but I think you also adopt positions that you know are going to get the anti-matrix mob inflamed. And it's just these all-encompassing views you have. COVID was a load of nonsense. Vaccines are all dangerous and killing more people than they
Never
say.
said that. I
No,
said the
but-
COVID vaccine.
Well, COVID vaccine, well, you don't think they worked?
No, of course not, because the idea
Of
of
course
a
they
vaccine,
worked.
the word vaccine in and of itself is that you
They
get,
saved millions of lives.
if you get a vaccine, you do not get the disease. They changed the definition of vaccine in the dictionary so they could continue to inject us with this pointless poison. I had the vaccine for polio. I've never had polio. You got the vaccine for COVID and you're bragging online how you have COVID for the 8th time, but it's not that bad because you've had 6 injections. It's insane. And please understand my position. Please understand I'm a person who doesn't believe any of these studies, don't believe any of this garbage, don't believe the Matrix. I'm a person who was in Sweden for 3 months as everyone was afraid.
So yeah, I want to wrap with that. I just kind of wanted to react to some of the beginning of this. Yeah, this is interesting. There's a lot of, like I thought, a lot of questions that I thought he was going to ask him. But yeah, kind of some new answers, new stories, kind of new, kind of some new takes. Well, not more of the same takes on COVID, but kind of reacting a little bit different. Not just saying word for word some of the, not just answering the questions word for word as he did some. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips.